Welcome to the last session of today, bar one. We've got a video to end on, and this is a very important session. It is a session in which young people ask questions of key professionals representing their sectors, and indeed the multi-agency sector, who will then answer their questions. It's an interactive session. It will be quite casual, so bear with us. My name is Renuka Jayaraja Dent, and I'm one of the members of the Child Safeguarding Practice Review Panel. I will start with our professionals to my left, and I'll start with you, Kath, who actually has taken the place of Okozia Naonin, who at the last minute, unfortunately, was not able to be with us, but Kath has very, very nicely stepped into her shoes.
Good afternoon, everyone. Hello, my name is Kath Evans. I'm a children's nurse by background. I currently work at Barts Health as Director of Children's Nursing there, and I've got the privilege of being the clinical lead for our Babies, Children and Young People programme in North East London. But during my career, I've had a chance to work at NHS England, and that's where we set up the NHS Youth Forum. So I'm absolutely delighted to be having a conversation with young people this afternoon.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Evelyn Ford. I'm head teacher of Coptal School. It's an all-girls school in Mill Hill in North West London. I've been a head teacher for 9 years. I've been in education for 24 years. I'm also the president of the Association of School and College Leaders, and we represent 24,000 school and college leaders.
I'm James Thomas. I'm the Director of Children's Services in Tower Hamlets, the heart of the East End of London, just up the road. I'm also a social worker. I'm a proud father of 3, and I'm here representing ADCS, the Association of Directors of Children's Services, who for some years now have been campaigning for a country that works for all children. So we are passionate about working towards a country in which every child's voice is heard, every child has a trusted, safe adult to turn to when they need them, that every family can access support when they need it, and that no child should have to grow up facing discrimination and disadvantage, whether it's racism or growing up in poverty.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name's Ian Critch. What a huge privilege to be part of this panel. Taking Farah's lead earlier, and I'm from the north. My wife was 30 years in GMP as a public protection officer. I've got 3 girls/adults who are my biggest critiques. I was head of public protection in Lancashire for 4 years, between 2008 and 2012, and then moved to Merseyside as a chief officer for 7 years. I've been the deputy there for the last 2 years. I've just recently retired, but come back as the national policing lead. I took that role on 2 years ago from Simon Bailey, one of the panel members, and a huge privilege to be part of, hopefully, the sessions today and the system where we can make a real difference around prevention, giving confidence to victims who need us and bringing more offenders to justice. So thank you.
I'm Annie Hudson. I'm chair of the National Panel, Child Safeguarding Practice Review Panel. I'm also a social worker by background. I've worked in various parts of the country, not just London, in Brighton, the North East and North West, and I've worked as a researcher, as an academic, and then latterly as a manager and a director of children's services in Bristol, and then most recently in Lambeth. And I took on the role, applied for and pleased to get the role of being panel chair, because I believe that we have to learn, and we have to learn with courage and conviction from when things don't go right for children, because we have a responsibility to continually to improve and to listen to the voices of children, families and of frontline professionals, so that we can go on constantly improving how we work and how we protect children.
Thank you. And most importantly now, to our young people, Ollie.
My name's Ollie. I work for the peer outreach team at the GLA. The reason I'm here today is to speak on behalf of all the young people whose voices need to be heard, and to just get some answers from the professionals that we should be able to call on and get help and advice from when needed.
Thank you, Ollie. Eleanor?
I'm Eleanor. I'm also on the peer outreach team. I'm passionate about making change on all levels to positively impact young people, to amplify their voices and to increase representation of all young people in strategies concerning them. I'm particularly interested in how life experiences at early stages of life impact their chances going forward, and how we can empower them by giving them opportunities to do their best.
Thank you, Eleanor. Zain?
Hello and good afternoon. My name is Zain and I'm part of the Lynk Up Crew. I'm here today in support of young people and making sure that their voices are heard.
Thank you, Zain. So we're going to ask a series of questions now posed by the young people. I'm going to chair and I'm going to be quite fierce because we need to keep the questions and answers quite short so that everyone can have a chance to voice their views. And I'm going to start with our youngest member of panel, and that is Zain. So Zain, is that all right? Question number 1.
How do you prove to children that there is love in your policies?
Now, I think that's an excellent question. I think that's an excellent question because stable homes built on love. What does love actually mean in practice? And I'm going to pick someone to answer this question. And actually, I'm going to start with Ian.
Good, great question. Zain, isn't that what the world's about, and allowing young people particularly to thrive in society, not be harmed? Obviously, I've come from an area in Merseyside where we've seen some of the worst harm that's been caused to young people in the tragic murders of Ava White and Olivia Corbell, a direct opposite to some of the acts of human kindness and love. I suppose your point is, how do we put that in a system? Words, kindness, care and compassion sometimes may not have been used in policing over many years, but I believe are absolutely central to engendering trust and confidence, particularly to those that we've marginalised and discriminated against before. It doesn't happen overnight. It requires leadership at every level and commitment around that, and it requires cross-sector working. I think there's a danger sometimes that, particularly during austerity, that we fall back into saying that we're all responsible for something. No, we're all responsible for providing love, care and compassion, and we do that best. Together as well, and we do it best from listening to young people. Where we get it wrong and accepting and pleasing hasn't been the best at apologising and accepting. We did that very quickly with the ICSA inquiry, acknowledging our failings before those people that we should be protecting and providing love and care to as well, and that real commitment to making a difference.
Thank you. James, I'm going to ask you, since you're representing the ADCS here, how do we measure it in terms of impact?
So I think we measure it by listening to what children tell us. I think children will know if they experience love and care in the way that they are treated. So I think it's really important that we create a culture in which we are listening carefully, listening deeply, both day to day, day in, day out, which is the important part of creating a culture in which we do that, as well as then collating that information, having structures in which children and young people can come together and represent the views in a more sort of engaged way when we're thinking about creating or developing policies.
Okay, and Evelyn, because we've got a number of questions to go, so I just wondered in your school,
Yep.
if Zain was to walk into your school, how would he know that love was in your policies?
He couldn't walk in because it's an all-girls school, but you'd be welcome. You would be welcome. But my young people, we talk about every child, every lesson, every day. And for us at Coptal, it's about meeting the needs of every individual young person, regardless of their starting point. So it's enriching their lives academically, but we wrap our arms around you metaphorically in terms of pastorally. So whatever experiences our young people might have, we have, limited, but we do have the resources to meet those needs and work with other sectors to make sure that they are at the heart of all our decision making. And I think if you put young people at the heart of your decision making, they will feel loved and respected.
Okay. Any other take on it apart from listening to young people? Yes, Annie.
Well, I suppose one of the things that, listening to what other colleagues have said, I think it's really important is that, because we've talked about listening, but I think it's also about making sure that practitioners, so people working directly with children, have the space and the resources and the time to be able to do that listening, to create the relationships. Because if they can't create the relationships and maintain those relationships, then people won't feel loved, they won't feel affirmed, they won't feel appreciated and listened to. So I think that's also as crucial.
Kath, did you have anything quick to add? I'm going to have to sometimes not allow everybody to answer the same question or we won't get through.
Zain, I'm just going to ask you, how would you like us to demonstrate that we are consistently demonstrating love through all of our services represented here today?
I think if you're trying to demonstrate how you show love in your policies, you should definitely go to young children and young adults and tell them what you've just told us, because not a lot of people will hear this, but not a lot of them will. So if you had, I don't know, people coming from every sector just to talk to schools, high schools, primary schools, colleges even, everywhere.
Thank you, Zain. Okay. Eleanor, your question.
Okay, so some groups are called at risk and hard to reach. How have these groups really informed your policies? And can you especially reference those with learning disabilities and the GRT community? Anyone know what that is? Gypsy, Roma and Traveller. Often hidden from sight, but also very much important.
Right. Annie, I'm going to start with you now, as an ex-DCS.
Well, that phrase "hard to reach" is a tricky one. I mean, because actually nobody's hard to reach. It's about the people trying to do the reaching out who I think need to ask themselves why they can't connect with an individual or group. So I think we have to turn the question round, and it's something about what is it we're doing or not doing to be able to connect with different groups or communities. So the two groups that you just picked out, so children with disabilities, I think, and the work that the panel's recently done, which Susan Trunter is over there, you can see her in the dark, led on for the panel around the abuse of children in residential settings who are disabled. I think what that's really shone a light on for me and for the panel is how children with disabilities are often just not seen and some of their particular needs. So I think it's about understanding that these are all children, and every child has the right to be protected and safety and so on. But different groups of children will have some slightly different needs. And we also mentioned about children from Gypsy, Roman and Traveller background. And I think we know that's a group who, if you look at education, have some of the most disadvantaged groups. So again, it's about how do we connect with those communities and those children to better understand their needs and what kind of support and help is really going to be right for them.
And Eleanor, I know you wanted to expand on your question, didn't you? You wanted to think about children's voices being heard right from the very beginning. Can you tell me more about that?
Yeah, so I guess with underrepresented backgrounds, and if they're hard to reach, they're also less likely to be listened to. And that led to a wider question about young people and their care and how their voices are as loud as yours in their own care. So from the start, from the very beginning, from that referral, from that adult about X, Y, Z, how do they know? How have they been informed? How have they been told? How do they know about the process of their care and how they can get involved with it? Yeah.
And that's I'm going to turn to you, I think, James, on this one, because I think it's a difficult question Eleanor asks. I think she's really talking about how children's voices are embedded right the way through a system. Is that right? Yeah. And how we know.
So I think there's a combination of approaches that we see lots of good examples of. But I think, if we're honest, they're not embedded across our systems. And that's the challenge, is to take those good practice examples and really embed them in everything that we do. I think there's a set of issues around the skills of professionals and the things that we ask of our professionals. So So I'm not sure that historically we have always asked all professionals across the multi-agency network to adopt co-production as just the way you live and breathe and do your work day in, day out. But if we do that, then we're equipping the right set of expectations, and our training and continuing professional development will reinforce that. I think that there are structural ways in which we can, again, ensure that we are focused on these ways of working with, not doing to. And that, again, some of this comes from the top. It's the influence that we can have as leaders in the questions that we ask. The things that we focus on are the things that our services then respond to. And of course, we need to model that from the top. So in our strategic boards, are children and young people directly represented when we're talking about a particular issue, a particular theme that we want to improve or do better on? Are children's voices at the centre of our consideration, both in what it is we're trying to achieve and how we do it?
Eleanor, did you want to come back on that?
Yeah, I think maybe in a targeted question about those in care, because I think the initial question was about in all care everywhere with a multi-agency approach. But for children in care in particular, how do they inform their own care? So, I mean, it's people who are actually being looked after, not just like a referral. Yeah.
I don't want to give you the floor for too long, but if you could just briefly address that. And I think I was going to ask you, Evelyn, how do you keep that focus on a child who may not be in the family of their birth or connected in the same way, an everyday way? Yeah. How do you keep that focus?
So do you want me to go?
Yes.
Just briefly then. So I think at the individual level, for an individual child, they need to feel empowered that they are co-producing their care plan. And I think it is important that we have embedded advocacy to help children of all ages to ensure that they do that. And then at a systems level, it's important that corporate parenting boards the agenda is kind of driven by children in care councils.
And just in answer to that, if I go back to every child, every lesson, every day, it's making sure that we know who those young people are. And my DSL is here with me today, and she knows who our young people are in care. We will do regular check-ins. We will talk to other agencies. We will make sure that, regardless of a young person's starting point, regardless of where they are in terms of, their life, that we have taken the time to understand their needs and their current context, and what can we do as an education establishment, what can we do to make sure that they feel safe and respected in our school setting. So I've got my DSL, we have other pastoral staff who will make sure that they're having those regular conversations.
Thank you. I know, Eleanor, you were also going to talk about social work turnover and physical and mental health, and I just wondered if you wanted to ask that question now.
Yeah, thank you. I know I've talked a lot already, but social workers. We had quite a discussion, all of us, about how social workers interact with their caseloads, and we noted that there has been a high level of turnover, and social workers having a massive caseload, which means that they can't show enough time or attention to each one individually. I just wanted to get your views on that and how you are tackling it and how you prioritize the experiences, mental health of the young person within your practices.
And I think Eleanor asks a really good question, because we've talked about relationships, but with social work turnover and with mental health and physical health being a priority for a number of children, particularly those in our care, I just wondered if there was a solution in the making. And I'm going to ask Kath, because mental health and physical health is your core profession, if you see what I mean. And I just wanted a quick answer to that. And Annie, I'm going to go to you about social work turnover from what you've picked up. But we're going to be swift because we've still got to hear from Ollie and then Zain again.
Eleanor, one of the really exciting things that we've actually seen is an integrated approach, and I think we've got an opportunity to really strengthen that going forward. So in James's patch in Tower Hamlets, in a housing association youth centre, we've got 2 GPs, a male and a female GP, that go in and work alongside mental health practitioners, alongside sexual health practitioners and youth work, including social prescribing, which is fundamentally, youth work, if I'm totally honest. But those integrated approaches are really demonstrating that we are indeed reaching those young people who are harder, more seldom heard in terms of the language that we've been using during this conversation. So I think as part of our integrated care systems, our ICSs, our integrated care boards developing, the more that we can work together, and also thinking about opportunities of integration with social workers could really give us some benefits as we think about the future.
So you think having a multidisciplinary team around the child means that if one person leaves, somebody else holds the story? Is that what you're saying, Kath?
Very much so. And also we benefit from each other's expertise as well. We know that our youth workers, for example, have really excelled in really getting to the heart of what some of our challenges are for young people, that then we can have a really rich, meaningful dialogue.
Thank you, Kath. Anis, swiftly.
I think probably James is a better person to answer this now, but anyway, just from where I sit. So the point about turnover, I mean, absolutely, and I think everybody in this room, whether or not they're in children's social care or outside, regrets the fact that we have seen increased rates of turnover and churn, and that means children don't have the consistency and continuity of relationships so they can trust and build those bonds and talk about the things that are worrying them. I think there are things being done, and I know ADCS has been working with the Department for Education around trying to tackle some of the issues about use of agency staff, because they are more likely to come and go more quickly. But it is a problem. I think there are issues about pay and conditions, but also, going back to a topic we talked with the Secretary of State about this morning, I think it's also about the kind of profile and sort of image of social work. I came into it a long time ago when I think it was a more positively viewed profession. Sometimes people feel a bit embarrassed to say they're social workers. But so we need to tackle that as well as the pay and the conditions, and making sure people can work in a good working environment. But it varies hugely. In some places, there's much less turnover than in others.
And I'm going to come back to you on other questions, and please roll it in if you can, because we're not going to get to Ollie otherwise. But, do mention it in answers to other questions. Ollie, over to you.
Thank you. My question was, when you witness a child behaving badly or antisocially, what are your instinctive thoughts and what are your initial actions as professionals, and have these thoughts changed over the course of your career?
Ollie, I'm curious as to why you asked that question, because it's about what is your instinctive thought when you see a child behaving badly. That's what you said, isn't it?
Yeah.
And has that instinct changed over the years with experience? Why do you ask that question, Ollie?
The reason why I'm asking it is because, for example, earlier I heard James say that to show that there's love in your policies, what you do is you're trying to listen to young people and listen to children. But I think it's important that we all know that young children and young people, they don't just speak with words, they speak with actions. And a lot of the times, in my experience, people that I know, we've been crying for help in school, we've been sending calls for help, but what you, as professionals, may look at it as bad behavior. And I will never forget when I got kicked out of school at 11 years old, looking at my head of year, my head teacher, having a conversation in front of me, telling me, this student's done, like he's finished, let's just get him out of here. That stuck with me for a very long time growing up. And I think it's important that professionals look at young children and look at each child individually and think about what they're going through so that they can prevent them getting kicked out of school and any other consequences down the line.
Thank you, Ollie. I think this is a question for you, Evelyn, isn't it?
Thank you. And firstly, I'm sorry that that was your experience. It shouldn't be the experience of any young children that we serve, because as teachers and leaders, we serve you. And I'm sorry that that was your experience. This morning at my school, between 9:30 and 11:30, I ran an inset just on that, just on behaviour and attitudes. And we had a real focus on empathy. And I think sometimes that's lacking in schools. I think that sometimes, you're right, that sometimes staff don't see what's behind the child. So what we've been doing is, we've been doing a lot of trauma-informed practice. I don't think we can underestimate the legacy of COVID and what our young people have been through, and what their lives were like for those 2 years, cooped up and, not having that interaction. So I do think that schools, we should continue to educate ourselves. We should really look at our practice. Trauma-informed practice really gets under the skin of what our young people are facing, so that when they walk in the school gates, they are carrying things with them. And it's our jobs as professionals to note that and to be able to support you with that. I think schools, we are really trying hard with social media as well, because I think the influences and the impact on young people's lives, I don't think that can be underestimated as well. So I think there's a lot of work that we can continue to do. And I think as educators, it's about us learning, it's about us listening and remembering that you're an individual, and what you're coming through those school gates with, we should not judge. We need to think about cultural differences. We need to think about all of that. And I think we need to do it as a sector. It's not just individual schools. And I think many school leaders are really trying their best to do that.
So I think, Ollie, what I'm hearing is that there's more recognition now amongst professionals as to what the kinds of things that each one of us has experienced, even suffered in the past, affects the way we behave. And I think that is more recognised now, and that is more put into practice. That's what I'm hearing, but I'll come back to you in a minute, because I'm going to ask Ian the very same question, because after all, Ian is here representing the police service, where troubled and troublesome behaviour is witnessed.
Yeah, I think it's a tremendously powerful question, and your question was also asking us about our own personal reflections. And I think, again, sometimes there's a danger in when we get to leadership positions, we point down as if we haven't sinned ourselves around. I think authenticity of leadership needs to accept our own vulnerabilities. I remember quite clearly in the 90s going to somebody who was shouting and screaming at me and probably wanted to be heard, and probably making a decision that I'll make an arrest and not listening. I don't look back with any pride, but with something then that can shape my influence around what the behaviours that I would want from policing, both for those that we're here to police and serve, but also that I would expect my own children to face. Similar to language where we blamed victims, which came out massively in terms of the independent inquiry into child sexual abuse, rather than actually seeing it from the very powerful voice of all those victims who gave. The challenge, and the challenge that you absolutely rightly put to us, therefore, is then how do we see the person, the victim, try and get behind maybe the behaviour that's being displayed for a reason, to be able to understand what's going on around it. There is some tremendous work going on led by Serena Kennedy, my Chief Constable from Merseyside, around prevention, around trauma-informed practice as well, asking what would you do by being presented with a number of different scenarios as well. I think there's push and pull on this as we get a quick new organisation, new people coming into organisation, maybe some political language around going back to basics. I prefer excellence in the basics. I'm not certain what we're going back to, because some of what we're going back to wasn't actually that good in terms of how we treated and dealt with young people. But let's look at the individuals that are presented to us as children, as young people. Let's try and get into their voice. Let's listen to that. I suppose it links back to the question around social workers and demand around it. We're seeing a very quick turnover of people very, very quickly, and we need to make sure that it doesn't matter to that young person whether somebody's got 1 day in, 10 years in, or 20 years in. They deserve empathy, compassion, care, and listening to seek to solve. Not a sticking plaster, and this is the other bit. I would talk a lot about systems leadership. If it's dead easy, it's not. And we sometimes all stick sticking plasters on and shunt that demand somewhere else, thinking that's our job done, whether that's somebody missing or not. The best practice I've seen is that where the walls are down, where agencies are working together, we're solving problems together, we're not pulling people out of the stream, we're stopping them going in the first place, but we're doing it with young people as well. And there is some fantastic work, but obviously we also continue to see some horror stories in the media where we marginalise, where we adultify people as well. And today, part of this is, you know, my ability to listen to you about where we've come from, where we are now, and what more we need to do.
Okay, that was an interesting answer, Ollie, because what I hear is that there's a lot of effort being put for a more humane system for our children. But I'm interested because when you spoke, and in fact your next question is about this thing called prevention, which is what Ian also said a minute ago. So do you want to ask that question?
Yeah, my question was, I wanted to ask if you all honestly think that different agencies who work in prevention really understand what prevention is?
I actually think, Ollie, that you should wrap in question 6 with that, because it was your view of what, you know, about prevention. You had a sub-question, so why don't you wrap it in? Because you asked what prevention is. Does everybody understand it? But your question number 6 was?
So question 6, I read that you say having a trusted adult is incredibly important, and it is, but a social worker who attempts to befriend you instead of providing professional advice is not enough. And in my experience, some people around me's experience, this seems to be the case too often recently, and I want to know what needs to be done, what help needs to be given to social workers to be able to, for them to build more effective relationships with young people in their care.
So I thought this was an important sub-question to the first one, because when Ollie was telling me the questions he wanted to ask, he asked, do people really understand what prevention is? And he implied and he said that we get a lot about relationships, but actually I want a relationship that knows what they are doing to make me better. And we have heard a lot about relationships today from everybody on our panel. But what really is special about a relationship with a professional aimed at making things better for a child? And do we really understand what that is? And what is the support that we're giving to our staff to make sure that they're not only warm and cuddly, as it were, but also firm and results oriented? And that was what Ollie said to me in so many words. Am I right or am I wrong, Ollie? Come back at me if I'm wrong.
So I got lost in both the questions.
Oh, thank you.
No, sorry, no. What I'm trying to say is that I think it's important that you as professionals understand that the relationship that young people need is what they need. We don't just want a social worker to be able to say, yeah, we have a social worker, look, we might be able to get this help, get that help. We genuinely need certain help. And I believe the best help that we can get is the right relationship with the right people, but also the question of prevention. Just, I wanted to ask you guys if you genuinely know what prevention is, because, for example, you have these policies or you have these things that you want to implement, but I think the most important thing that you need to do is take everybody case by case and person by person. For example, the actions I said, you see a young person acting out of character, acting antisocially, forget whatever policy is there. When you're going to send that young person to detention, before you sit them in the detention room, maybe say to them, you've been in detention 5 times this week. why? And that's your first step to prevention. So I just wanted to ask whether you all genuinely knew what prevention was.
Okay, thank you. Right, 3 people can answer this question. Who are those 3? I guess it has to be our DCS representative, doesn't it?
Yeah, happy to go first. Really quite profound questions, Ollie. Do I think genuinely that there's a consistent understanding of prevention across all organisation agencies? No. It's something that we try and work on, but I think it's telling that some of the work that I've been involved in, Tower Hamlets and other places before that, has really just been looking at the very basic building blocks. So a common language, because the vocabulary we use is different between the police and the health service and schools and social workers. A common understanding of how we're going to support children and families in our local area. I think it really does vary, if we're honest, across partnerships at the moment. Not helped, and I know it's been referred to once or twice already today in other conversations. Not helped by government is not joined up, and government sets these different parameters for our different partner agencies. So we've kind of reflect some of that divergence, and then to touch on your other sort of key question about that you want effective relationship-based practice, not just relationships, not just somebody who knows how to get on with you. I mean, I think that is a starting point, and the kind of recruitment that we carry out. And we talk a lot these days about values-based recruitment, so less about technical skills, more about people with the right mindset and aptitude to work with people. But then we've got to put in the professional development. Because social work is a change business. It's a skilled business of helping children and families to make changes. And pretty much everywhere these days has what we call a practice framework, which supports that professional development. So absolutely, it should be skilled relationships that you're experiencing.
Skilled, knowledgeable relationships. I'm going to move us on, and then I'll have somebody else answer the question, so you can roll up any answers to that one in the next 3 questions, because I want Zain to have a chance to ask some questions now. Zain, do you want question number 7?
What are you doing to make sure people like me and young people in general feel safe in our local areas, particularly around serious youth violence?
I think this has to be Ian, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Yes?
Zane, thanks for the question. Gosh, we should be in a society where, again, people like you, fantastic people like you, can go about thriving in society, not in fear. And I think, again, I flip my answer around in some regard here, and I think I probably would have previously started with around your behaviour or victims' behaviour in the first place. It actually should be flipped around, and actually should be concentrated first. And I think some great work around Satira and the evidence that's coming from the rape reviews around, let's concentrate on actually the person who's perpetrating the behaviour in the first place, and let's concentrate on changing them. Behaviour that has almost become normalised around why is somebody carrying a knife, why is somebody behaving like that. Again, work that we've done around county lines, organised criminality. Before we then even start putting around orders or enforcement on that offender. Secondly is location, and whether that is, again, careful and be challenged of language online and offline, that location should be safe for young people. A lot of work being done around the online safety bill at this moment in time, because people should be able to go online, enjoy it, but be safe from exploitation, grooming, and abuse, the same as in public spaces, and that goes much beyond policing. It goes into lots of aspects of society in order to make sure there are safe spaces for young people and, of course, for women and girls. Of course, there is a role around behaviour that has become normalised as well for young people, and harmful behaviour as well. So I think that there is work that we are learning from around our violence reduction units, and investment that's gone into those violence reduction units. Unfortunately, that's previously been 1 year funded. It needs to be mainstreamed as well around it. And I think what I've heard today is, where's the policing role within this? And some people will look and try and imagine, well, the policing are specifically here to do that. We have a role around mental health. We clearly have a role around safeguarding. We have a role around enforcement. But some community-based policing, it links back to the work around Gypsy Roma, travellers' disability. When we are properly represented, where we have good engagement. I've heard, recently around what's the role of policing within schools. Some people don't want policing in schools. I think with good empathy, compassionate, caring policing, there is absolutely a role for policing, as long as it's done in the right way, done with other partners, but most importantly, done with young people as well.
So Zain has been very brave in representing his school and his area and London in some of the concerns that all young people are worried about at the moment. And we're running out of time, but one of the questions he had was just some advice, didn't you, Zain? Question number 8, just some advice for all young people in London, not necessarily Zain himself.
So what advice do you have for us as to how keep safe? Mm-hmm. What advice do you have for us to keep safe, and are you planning to make the area safer in any ways?
So this is about advice to young people. That particularly is something, and I'm going to go through everybody now, literally 30 seconds. And I'm going to start with you, Kath.
In terms of making children and young people safe, or working with children and young people to create safety, one of the things I just wanted to pick up on Eleanor's comment was regard to early years and the power of health visiting. And you also picked up on Gypsy Roma traveller communities. When you have special needs, special focused health visitors who can really work directly with the community, that can be really powerful. And actually, if we support families very early with good health visiting, actually we can create really, really strong communities. So I'm just going to put a bit of a plea in for early intervention, and I'm also going to give a shout out to the voluntary sector. So at the Royal London Hospital, Major Trauma Centre, St Giles does phenomenal work with amazing people with very lived experience who will directly work with schools, but also go into pupil referral units as well. So I think there are many, many more opportunities to work with our VCS colleagues going forward.
Thank you, Kath. Advice, Evelyn?
Yeah,
a few words of advice.
Yeah, I think just very briefly, I'm going to go back to relationships. Have somebody that you can go to, knowing that there is no judgment in terms of what you're going to say. Because I think that sometimes something could happen outside of school, and a young person could be embarrassed, could not want to share what had happened. But if we don't know, we can't help. So actually talk to your trusted adults in school, and what more schools are doing. We're at the bus stops, we're around the locality of the school. So engage with your professionals, engage with your teachers, because we will be there to support you. And when you are in your PSHE lessons, listen to the content that's being delivered, because it's definitely worthwhile.
So, James, I know you're disseminating the Casey review for London, and literally I want 3 words advice, because I'm running out of time.
So I'm not disseminating the Casey review, I'm leading local authority engagement with our police colleagues on the Casey review. 3 words, trusted adult. I'm going to echo what Evelyn's saying. Listen to advice about things that may put you more at risk. And the other thing would be make a fuss, make a noise. I think children and young people should make more noise about not feeling safe, so it becomes more of a political issue that politicians take seriously.
Okay, you're all going to have a last word in a minute, because Zain's going to ask you a question, and I'll start with you, Annie, so maybe roll up your 3 words in that, and then I'm going to come back to you guys to end. So Zain, your last question.
I want to know what you have taken from our questions today and the conference today. How will this influence your policies going forward?
Annie?
Well, I suppose what's really come through for me personally today is the power of young people's voices, but having them really threaded into the conference, and I'm sure we could have done more. but I suppose I'm going away in terms of the panel, is that we need to think about how we have much more active engagement with young people to shape the work that we do. So it's just been brilliant. And I mean, the thing I was also going to say in relation to the last question was the earlier video from Newham, the Courageous 3, whereas that how young people are much better advocates for seeking help and trusting people than professionals can be. So it's something about how we really use your expertise really to help keep children safe, and I think we only do that in a rather tokenistic way at the moment. We've got lots to learn and do. So really exciting, actually.
Thank you, Anne. Right, keep it brief, folks. Ian?
Yeah, just a couple from me. Zane, just in your point, what have you taken? I think Annie uses the word tokenism. I think there is still that around in terms of our use of young people, advisory groups around. There's a little bit of we know best still against actually really using the evidence, which includes speaking to young people, listening and making sure that we're adopting not just our policy and practice. I agree, I think you can be technically competent, but you also be very value driven in terms of the services. We are public services, we're here to serve the public around it. So I think I've taken much more about how we are doing that. I also think the portrayal of young people, this is really complex. But the media, the mainstream media as well, social media, will portray young people in a certain way, often with a lot of bias. And it's like prevention. You will never hear a great story of prevention. You will just hear a tragedy around it, and that can demonise young people. I don't offer the answer, but we need to make sure that we lift up the great, the good, the inspirational. Obviously, we've got that on the stage today as well, because that influences what we're here to do.
Thank you. James?
So similar themes, really. I think both for my kind of day job in Tower Hamlets, but also nationally for us as ADCS, I'll take away, go back to do a health check about where are we not? Are there areas of our work where we are not putting children's voices at the centre of our considerations? Because we should be, always. And a bit of an echo what Anne has said, I think we can think more about the power of children's voices in terms of peer messaging than we do, rather than just thinking that as adults we're the best placed to kind of give out key messages.
Thank you. Evelyn?
Yeah, I think as a head teacher, we do listen to our young people at my school, but I'm hearing more lived experiences. So what I've taken from this is particularly your story, Ollie, about your experiences at school, and what we as a sector can do differently. And because I represent 24,000 members, I think that's a massive reach to remind all school and college leaders of the power of relationships, the power of trauma-informed practice, and remembering every child, every lesson, every day.
Kath?
Ollie, Zane, Eleanor, you've just refueled my focus to go back to the NHS to ensure that we keep our focus on babies, children and young people. It can often get quite quiet, and it's really, really important that we keep focusing on your needs moving forward, but also that we keep collaborating with all of our partners. And I think you facilitating the conversation here today with so many partners is really, really important. So you're sitting on my shoulder as I leave today. Thank you.
Thank you, Kath. We can't finish, and I know I'm just a minute late, but without our three young people saying their final comments. I'll come to you last, Zane. Shall we go to Eleanor next? So just a concluding comment, Eleanor.
Okay, so we've talked a lot about the now, but we've also mainly talked about the future and changing the future for young people using these preventative strategies, using digital technology, etc. It's been a great conference, but I'd like to remind you all, a lot of people say that young people are the future, but they are also the now. So yeah, keep that going forward, and yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Eleanor. Ollie? Come on, Ollie, you can say something.
No, all I'll just say is what I think I've realised from this conversation is that you're trying. I'm not going to deny that, because no. what I've realised is throughout all these years that people make policies, like they don't waste their time on policies for no reason. Like they're really trying when they do the policies, but I'm just happy that slowly but surely you're understanding how they need to be implemented, who needs to be influencing them, which is the young people. And I'm happy that slowly but surely we're understanding what we need to do and how we need to work together. So that's what I've seen from this.
And my youngest member of panel, whose parents are here to be really proud of him, what do you have to say?
Thank you for coming and listening to me, Ollie and Eleanor, and thank you for making the time to come here.
And you know what? Uncharacteristically, I'm speechless. That's the end of this session, and we are all going to walk this way and leave Annie on stage. Okay?
I'm staying up.
Thanks to everybody, including the new Fiona Bruce in the guise of Renica. Thank you very much. So just a couple of things before we depart. We're going to end with a short video from colleagues from Somerset, some group of young people in Somerset and working with Somerset Safeguarding Partners, so out of London for a moment, who've done this really powerful video, and we thought it would make a really good ending for this conference. So hopefully it can play now.
We need you to work together. We need you to understand.
Never stop being there to listen, to see the real me, even when you feel that you've heard all I have to say. Keep looking deeper beyond your first impressions.
Listen to me, not just my words.
I am not a level. Talking about my needs as a level doesn't help me get the support I need.
Ask me what I want. I need your support and someone who will help me fight my corner.
Working together means I only have to tell my story once.
Together, you can see all of me.
I need you to understand what my needs are.
I need you to share your power and fight with me.
I need you to see beyond my behaviour. It's not personal, it's hurt and frustration. I don't know who to trust.
Working together means that I don't have to keep telling my story over and over and over again.
Although there is pressure on services, please take the time to understand the differing needs of different individuals.
I need you on my side to fight my corner. I need you to share your power.
I don't need you to feel sorry for me. I need you to stand beside me and see the world from my point of view.
I need you to keep listening behind my words until you can hear my voice.
I need you to keep looking past my behaviour until you can see past my hurt and frustration, until you see me.
You might be all I have. Please, stand with me. I may be small, but I am brave. I have big dreams. I need your strength.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
So thanks to Somerset young people for that final thank you, with lots of resonating phrases and reminders of the things that really matter for children. So we're nearly at the end of the conference, and I just really want to say a few final things. Firstly, to thank, first first of all, and perhaps most importantly, thank the many young people, children and young people who have contributed in different ways, either by being here with us today, including the magnificent panel crew, the deep black photographers, the people working in Somerset. So I think what they will certainly leave me with, and I'm sure you, is a really strong sense that they need to be sitting on our shoulders, whatever job we're doing, whatever role and position we have. And I love that phrase that was said just now about young people are the now, they're not just the future. So many, many thanks. So can we give a final round of thanks and appreciation to the kind of extraordinary courage, really, of coming and talking in, I felt pretty nervous this morning, so I'm just so, awe-inspired by the way in which young people have presented to us today. Other thanks, firstly to Amina and the Secretariat, I don't know where they are, who've been organising this conference for many, many weeks. I'd forgotten what the trials and tribulations of organising a conference, so if we could just give them a round of thanks, please. And then also to my panel colleagues and the many presenters who've really made a lot of important contributions in different ways to this conference. And I hope that you're all taking away a sense of kind of learning, of some new ideas, some new ways of thinking, some good refreshment for the really difficult, hard jobs that I know you all do. So thank you very much indeed. I think we're closing now, and enjoy the rest of the day. Thank you.